Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for the latest installment in our Conversations with We series. My name is Christine Urea, Chairwoman of We. And for those of you that are new to We, we're an organization that formed 7 years ago by a group of women in the CPG health and wellness industry who came together with an aligned vision of empowering women in our industry. The We community is focused on connecting, supporting, and encouraging women leaders in the wellness landscape, and creating a stronger voice for elevating the role of women leadership within our industry. We're on a mission and a journey to build a community for networking and supporting career growth while still balancing our personal and family priorities. And every year we focus on broadening our reach into our community in a multitude of ways. But one of them is through honest conversations with topical webcasts and panels like what we're having today. So we're excited to bring you the latest installment. Our topic today is around ageless ambition. We've got a fantastic panel that we're excited to share with you. And within that, part of our objective of this particular topic is to share the fact that while we all don't always love the topic of aging, age can be your greatest advantage when it comes to your career, and because it's often accompanied by a wealth of wisdom and confidence and resilience. And as we advance through life stages, we encounter fresh and invigorating opportunities alongside some unique challenges related to that development. And so today you're going to hear from some fantastic leaders who have skillfully navigated these opportunities. They fearlessly tackled new challenges and are now propelling their careers into greater heights in that next chapter as a part of their professional journey. So we're excited for this panel today. I'm going to transition over to Wendy Liebman, who's going to be introducing our panel and hosting and moderating our event today. Wendy?
Thank you, Christine. Hello, everyone. As it's great to be here with the broader community. So we always love the opportunity to chat, share, laugh a lot. You missed all that. We were having a good laugh before, but we promise to reveal much as we go. It's my pleasure to, first of all, introduce our amazing panelists, because they are amazing. I'm going to do it in alphabetical order. Roz Chapman of the Chapman Edge, Tina Jaxie, Chief Commercial Officer from Wellful, Jocelyn Conrad, Chief of Stores at Family Dollar and Dollar Tree. Is that right? Both? I think so. She's nodding. I should know this right by now. And Lisa Paley, President North America of Haleon. Thank you all for joining me today. This is interesting. When we came to this topic as a community, and it was ageless ambition, it struck, I think, all of us that actually this was a journey that the beginning of a new series of conversations we're going to have at We did that several years ago, where we really began to look at things like diversity and inclusion, and we did a whole series that we call We Move Forward. So for me, ageless ambition was about ambition at any age. And so I think that's part of this conversation that we'll begin and we'll continue throughout the year. So I don't know about the four of you, but when I first heard the topic, it reminded me of being in a Nike store. Of course, that's all I ever do, spend my life following shoppers and looking at retail. And above the lintel at the first Nike town, there was a sign that said, "There is no finish line." And that was as you walked out the store. And on the one hand, I went, oh my God, there is no finish line. I'm exhausted. On the other, I was like, wow, that's pretty exciting. So when I look at the four of you, I get this sense that it's a journey. So let me ask you, Lisa, first. When you think about this notion of ageless ambition, what does that bring to mind for you personally, in where you are, where you've been, where you're headed?
Well, it's a really interesting concept. And even, as we thought about doing this, because I've never oriented off of age, like it's never been what defined me at really any stage of my career. And it was never the context that motivated me or held me back. And so I think about it as, these phases that you go through. Now, did confidence grow over time, as I matured? Yes, probably. But I think about, like, how do you be your best you at any age, right? And make sure that you're really, it's the mindset, I think, about, the opportunities that are in front of you. And so I always was just thinking about, like, how do I do the next best job at the next opportunity I have, right? And then those things kept building, and that has led, to a very long, satisfying career, really built because I have a true, genuine passion and interest in what I do. And so, I've been able to do it for that reason for a long time. I'll stop there, but that's a lot, of how I think about it. It's been the sequence of steps in a journey.
What's interesting about that is I did decide I better look up what ambition means, because I think with women, ambition and women is often a very loaded expression or term. So I looked it up, and it's interesting what you said. It's the Oxford Dictionary says it's a strong desire to do or to achieve something, typically requiring determination and hard work. Raise our hands, all of us. That's at any age, right? So within that, sorry, I didn't mean to force you to raise your hands, but it seemed obvious, right? So, Roz, for you, how did this sort of notion of journey, life, we're all in different, I should have said this earlier, we've got this great diversity of business backgrounds here, individually owned companies like Roz's and mine, big global corporations, investment-led new companies, retail. So now that I've said that, put it away. So Roz, when you think about this notion of ambition and ageless ambition, what did it bring to your mind when we decided to talk about this? You're on mute. Did we remember that one?
Okay. Hi, everybody. First of all, I'd like to bring it in from not just an age perspective, but experience perspective. And the experience that came with working through people who were various ages in my career, I didn't think about it like Lisa. I didn't think about how old someone was. I just thought about how, gee, they're really smart. I remember asking one of my business associates with a retailer I called on. It was like she knew something about everything. Meeting with her was refreshing. And I said to her, how is it that you stay so sharp? She said, I engage with retailers and she says, I engage with other retailers and I engage with my vendors. They make me smart. The more I meet and have conversations with various people, the better I am at my job. So that comes with years of experience and becoming a seasoned executive.
But that is something at any age, right, that we could do if we recognize that's a way to grow and learn throughout our career, I suspect. So that's an interesting point. Tina, from your perspective, when you think about yourself and a path, ambition?
Well, when we talked the last time, Wendy, I said to myself, ageless ambition, and I said endless inspiration. Okay. Ageless, endless, you're right. It's not about an age. And I still, every day when I get up, I feel like I'm still creating myself each day. Okay. I feel very blessed, been very lucky, but also worked really hard. And absolutely, sometimes I get knocked because I am an overly optimistic person, and I'll share a little bit more about that later. But always assuming positive intent, okay? And it doesn't matter the age. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter in the room, but looking at the situation, what I want to learn, what I want to do, what is next, you don't know. It's just viewing it with a positivity that says, I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow. It's not going to be easy. If it were easy, we wouldn't be challenged. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, and much building on what Lisa said, the doing the best job at the time. Josie, I think about when I first met you, I can't remember if it was Eckerd or Rite Aid or where on your journey, right? And then this whole new gig that you have, which is amazing and extraordinary. I love chief at stores. That's almost as good as chief shopper. I don't know, I have to think about that. Anyway, but from your journey, from a retail perspective, is it, as you think about this and the ambition you have for yourself, we know you're a hard worker. How does that, is it the same or different to what the others have said?
No, it's very much the same. It's definitely a journey, but for me, interesting enough, it is definitely ageless. Like I think about my 12-year-old self, and wow, some days I admire her, right? Because it wasn't the wisdom, although that's important as you go through the journey. It was almost that curiosity and that naivety that created me to do certain things because I didn't know any better. Whereas sometimes today I mitigate risks and all because of my knowledge, and I'm probably not as ambitious as I was when I was 12. So I reach back in time during that journey to put myself back there, or challenge myself to stay open-minded and to not have biases. And some of my learning stopped me from doing something new and finding solutions for different things. So it's really the journey collectively, but it comes back around. And ageless is a great way to say it. It doesn't matter what age I was or even what levels of wisdom and knowledge I've learned, staying continuously curious and having a drive to find solutions is at the core of it. It doesn't matter what part of my journey. I just have to keep reminding myself to stay there so that I can continue to grow and learn and continue to build upon the passion, which is retail for me. Even though I tried really hard to get out of it, I got sucked right back into it. So
it's in the genes, I'm afraid. By now it's in the bloodstream, so you're not getting out of
it
it
is.
anytime fast. So, I mean, you've all talked to this point about journey. You've talked about the moment. You've talked about curiosity and learning. So does that suggest that there wasn't okay, here's my roadmap, here's my plan? Because I know in talking, particularly to a lot of younger people, they say, well, what was your plan? How did you get from here to there? So you're all laughing. So that means pick a one, Tina, what plan didn't you have?
Well, I honestly, that made me chuckle because my first memory of sales, I have an older brother who is extremely shy, very quiet. We don't look anything alike. No one ever thought we were siblings. And he had to sell Pancake Day tickets for the Boy Scouts. He would not do it. So I took the tickets. He stood at the end of the driveway. I knocked on the door and was like, hi, I'm selling tickets for that really shy kid down at the end of the driveway. This is what it's for. And then my father, my endless inspiration, was in sales. And I said, I'm never going to be in sales. Like he was gone, he traveled. I'm never going to do that. So I don't know. I think sales chose me. Okay. When you start something and you have such a passion for it, I just knew that when I got into it, I wanted it to be something that, was meaningful, something I use, something I love, something I enjoy. And if you look at the companies that I've been with, all of those things are it. And I just will say with the Ageless Ambition, I made a major change about a year and a half ago from categories, okay? From beauty and personal care, my entire career, to health and wellness, okay? Because after COVID, everything was health and wellness, and it's at our core. And I have never been more excited and energized, and that's what gets me out of bed every day. And you just never stop learning. Okay, just never ever stop learning, never stop seeking, be endless curiosity, just endless curiosity.
So Lisa, you've been nodding to all of that plan. Day 1 I'm going to be here, day 4 I'm going to be here, year 5 I'm going to be there. Plan, no plan?
I think if I had a plan, it wouldn't have ever materialized because, I have been in the industry 30 years, but it's been incredibly dynamic through mergers, acquisitions, divestments, etc. So I might have wanted a plan that I thought was a little bit more straight line, but it has ended up with all these kind of really fascinating experiences. And I do think, while you want to have goals, you do want to have a steer, you want to be adjusting dials on where you want to go. I think we don't want to kid ourselves that we control too much of that, because, one experience builds on the other, the universes that work behind the background. And, a lot of things have to kind of go well. And some of that is luck and timing. And some of that is a lot of what you're hearing, from these fantastic women, which is you need a lot of determination, and you need to understand, on a hard day, what's it going to take you to get through and get back up and get going again? Because it's not like every stop was easy either, and you have to figure out, like, how do you find that purpose and that why, that on those tough days you can persevere. And I think that I did have, that, even though I didn't have a master plan, even though I had, I was always achievement oriented, so don't get that wrong, but I didn't have like this overly ambitious agenda. I didn't even know what a president of North America was when I started. You know what I mean? So it's like, I would have been kidding myself to say that that was true. And I came from a family owned business. I didn't know even big corporate public life, so I was just learning the whole time that I was, going, and just really trying to maximize each experience.
Mhm. And Roz, when I think about, you and your background and those goals, the moment that you said, now I'm off to do this, to do the Chapman Edge as opposed to corporate life, that moment that caused you or encouraged you, as Lisa was saying, to think, okay, I've got these skills, but now I really am going off in another direction. What was that moment? Was there a moment?
A distinct moment. It really was. I mean, I really live my life by divine order. And I just feel like when it's right, fortunately, with wisdom and being a seasoned executive, I've learned to read that better. And I know when it feels right, and I know when it doesn't. And it just didn't feel right where I was. I mean, they were so good to me. I mean, the corporation I worked for, they couldn't have been better. I mean, I got so many first chances with them. They were good trainers. They exposed me to a lifestyle I didn't even know existed, with many perks. So the training I could never, ever replace. And I say that to some of the wonderful people I report to now in my business, who are pretty much without exception younger than I am. But I learned so much from them. The importance is training at every level. What did I learn? How did I learn it? And if it doesn't feel right, knowing when to jump, because then you won't be sad. You want to be happy if you have to work, and you have to know what you're good at. Hone it. If you can't leave your job because of financial reasons or for obligations, then once you know your skill, work in the community, volunteer. Volunteer in a sorority, volunteer in a church, volunteer, get good at it, and then look around for what you like. That way you can really continue to be cutting edge.
Yeah, that's a really interesting comment in the context of sometimes we think of ambition and learning new skills as has to come from, that, I was going to say 9 to 5, for most of us, not 9 to 5, but that work experience where what you're suggesting is, in fact, we can learn and grow and build community and mentorship even outside our workspace that we can bring back into that. And the others, Jossie, that experience. I mean, I remember stories you've told of being a young kid and your ambition. That today, even though you sometimes think twice about things you're doing, is there an external opportunity for you to bring that experience back into Jocelyn, the work person?
Yeah, I think for me, and again, the plan, right? There was no plan. I think finding what I was really passionate about, honestly, drove every decision I ever made. It wasn't about the title, lateral, there was no plan. I just wanted to really enjoy and get up out of bed every day and, I don't know, make the world a better place than I left it, and really have a reason to do what I'm doing. As long as there's the why and the purpose, I have put all of my energy into my job and my family. So unlike Roz, I don't do the community as much as would love to, but I think I can impact communities with the work I do within the retail world, right? I probably impact communities and people who live in them in a very different way via the associates who I'm with today in store.
Yeah.
Sorry. And so I think that is my plan, right? Is just to make the world a better place, to help people be their best selves and give back wherever I can, and raise people and associates and community to be a better place. So no plan, but
So,
definitely is a driving force,
yeah.
right?
So it sounds like there are the sort of parameters that you've all created within this context, not a, year one, year two, year three, but here are the things either, as you said, Tina, that I'm really good at or I'm passionate about, or in the moment that I need to be really, to do this job. So because I do hear younger people saying, well, what's my, if I'm not here by next year, or if I'm not here by the year after, as opposed to this openness of mind to opportunity. And to your point, Lisa, all the changes that go on in big or small corporations these days. So where does it fit? You've all talked about curiosity and learning, mentoring, self-taught. I mean, how does our community have to think about, do I need mentors? Who do I look for mentors? Lisa, start this one off for us.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was fairly far along in my career before mentors really became a thing because it's a relatively later concept. It wasn't so prevalent. And by the way, when I started, men weren't reaching out saying I'd like to mentor you. That just how it was not working. And I would say that I wouldn't be where I was without some of that mentoring. But I would say when that mentoring transitioned to sponsorship, that was probably the big difference and the bigger leap, up into more additional responsibility, more senior executive C-suite, more exposure to some of those things. And the difference is really, a mentoring, I call it like it's a good exchange. Sometimes that's at a peer-to-peer mentoring, or sometimes, usually a level above or maybe two. When you're sponsored, by somebody at the table with a seat already who's willing to put their name out for yours. And a lot of that is through, how your work and you reflect back on their ability to want to endorse that. Right. And so, it's a very important thing, but it does start with mentoring. Like, you have to have those early people that you trust and will give you real candid advice and feedback when you need it, and that coaching, but makes it psychologically safe to do so. And I think getting that combination earlier in career is great for folks.
Yeah, you're nodding, both Jossie and Tina, about, well, you're all nodding, but Tina, when you think about that, I mean, was it you reaching out to find somebody to support you, or somebody comes to you? I mean, how did that work for you in that
I would
relationship?
agree. I'm right with Lisa, and that was, years ago, we didn't have that mentorship. So you had to seek out, and you find yourself gravitating towards people that you want to learn from. Okay. And you build that relationship. And what I would tell younger people is always remember that what you learn from other people, you're going to learn what to do, but pay attention because you're going to learn what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's really equally important. And I always told myself, whether it was a mentoring situation, or as I got sponsored, or I furthered along in my career, I always told myself, I'm in the driver's seat. Okay. My mentor, my coach, my sponsor, they can be the GPS. Okay. So when you get in your car, remember the days you had a Garmin, a GPS? Well, you had to tell it where you wanted to go, where you thought you wanted to go. You can't expect people to just guess. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you have to be in a comfortable situation where you can communicate what it is you want to do, and then surround yourself and seek out those that you think can help you get there. But again, it's the communication, because they can't guess where you want to go. And remember, there's always several routes. You got to remember that.
Yeah. So Roz, in your world where you also look at your broader community, is there mentorship, sponsorship, are there people beyond your clients and the people you work with who have really helped inspire how you think about this journey that you're on?
Absolutely. In so many routes I've taken, and it's been those that you least expect. What I've learned is to have curious conversations, especially when I'm looking for answers about something. I write a few questions down, and if I know I'm going to be at a trade show or I know I'm going to be at a reception, I create my own little focus groups. I've got these 2 or 3 questions I'm curious about. Let me have them ready for who I may run into while I'm out and about. One of those situations used to be that we don't have anymore was going to headquarter calls. Back in the day, for those of us who are national account managers, we had days that we had standing appointments, that we would be in the headquarter offices of some of the retailers. Well, in those environments, you create lobby buddies. I call them my lobby friends. Well, my lobby buddies become my friends through several jobs, through several chapters in our lives, some of those with us and some not, but you remember them fondly. And in those scenarios, I call them my mentors. I don't know them personally at all. But when I would see them in the lobby, I'm like, hey, it was like we were best of friends.
Yeah.
So that carries on to their roles at trade shows, different positions. I've gotten contracts that way through that. Even if it wasn't intended to be, it'll come that way. So being able to have the discernment of, I'm not asking you for anything. I just want to know you. But when it's time and it fits, maybe it'll just come together, and it usually does.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I do think about, we all spend time at trade shows, conferences, things like that, where that opportunity, well, now that things have opened up again, those opportunities to learn, engage, be curious, get answers in a formal or informal way become pretty powerful on all of that. I mean, Jossie, I think about your transition from one big retailer or 2 big retailers to this new one, that new experience there and that engagement with a whole new team and a whole new place, new formats, that learning around that. Tell us a bit about that journey.
Yeah, so it's interesting when Tina said this, it reminded me of, seeking to understand, being in the driver's side. Don't wait for people to come to you. And throughout my career, I always would ask multiple people the same question. So I'm doing that here as I learn and navigate, because I really want to understand the real answer. And it's very interesting when you ask people questions and you don't know them. You just, play dumb. Oh, hey, can you tell me about this?
What is the question?
It could be anything.
Oh, I see. I thought you had any question.
Okay. Who should I? Oh, no, not the question. A question.
Okay.
A question. But what you do is you learn about people, and that's how I've kind of navigated and realized who are my go-to people, right? I figured out who's really going to give me the honest answer. And then I've created my own, I call it my own board of directors, but they're mentees, right? They're the people I go to after I understand the knowledge that they have. I understand if they're going to be honest with me. I understand if they're going to give me a canned answer or the real answer. And I'm doing that even as we speak. And the other thing I learned, which I probably didn't do at an early age, and again, Lisa and Tina, I agree with you, I didn't have mentors. But to your point, Roz, is asking the question. So I was in a meeting. I'll use this example. I was in a meeting, and it was the old school stuff, like stuff that I thought we had overcome. And here I am starting all over, where people aren't listening to my voice. I'm not in the room. I'm the only woman in the room in a certain situation. And I leaned on some other female executive in the organization to say, okay, please tell me, how do you navigate this? Because it's been a bit that I've seen this, and I'm not really sure how to navigate in this organization. How do you suggest I do this? Because at some point in time, you probably had to as well. So instead of trying to recreate the wheel or struggle through it, which I would have done in my past life, or come to people at my sisters at I would now I'm strong enough to know I got to go ask that question to someone who knows and build those relationships. So I'm not rewriting the GPS navigation. I'm going right to the GPS and say, how do I do this? Or what is your recommendation? So I've learned through my past mistakes how to get quicker to the answer, and get support in a very different way by asking. I'm in the driver's seat. I'm not going to let someone see me cry in the corner and then pull me out. I'm going to go and look for the answers myself.
Yeah, that knowledge, self-awareness, but also a lot of the things that you're all talking about are not these formalized processes, roadmaps, I don't know what else to call them, but this willingness to sort of to be open, to be curious, to ask questions, to learn as you go, to frame up or support the goals that you have, as you said, Lisa. I mean, the notion of bias, and I'm sort of going to, in so many levels, whether it's, excuse me, being the radical feminist, why not? The advantage of ageless ambition. But there's sort of this notion of either whether it's bias as a woman, or bias around age, or being in a profession that's not familiar with you. How do you've talked about how you overcame that, Jossie. For the others of you, have you faced it, and then how did you overcome it for the community we're talking to today who may or may not face that? Lisa, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I will. Look, there's a lot of bias out there, right? And I think, as we think about this topic, I mean, we're not Hollywood, so it's not like there's this big where you drop off a cliff, at a certain age, by any means, in business, the way, it happens for actresses and things. But I do think we have to just be mindful, because there's a whole bunch of women who are going to age in, honestly, because it's been a movement. And thank you, Wendy, for, forging pathways and doing those things. No, it's meaningful. And so I do think, we have to watch for those things. But certainly over the years, there were gender biases, and there still are in many pockets or places, right? So I always say, be really careful what lens you're putting on any company or any situation, because things can show up very differently or feel optically off. And I think we have to just keep getting better and better about that, and finding productive ways to challenge bias, and not really ever underestimating what you personally can do about it with where you are in your career, whatever circle of influence you do have, and doing it, in ways that people will come with you on change, but being comfortable to challenge conventions and asking hard questions, especially, sometimes during talent discussions, like, well, why wouldn't she be as good as him at something like that? And just raising people's awareness about some of that underlying bias that all people have. I can remember earlier in career, there was the bias in salary. Now, I will say, and I'm proud, I work for a company who's really fixed that gender, equity issue, but there was lots of that going on. Well, she doesn't need that because, she's going to go out on mat leave. And it's like, what? You're trying to make those decisions for us. Like, that kind of stuff, you have to really, listen for some of those subtleties and assumptions. And I think, having the courage to just challenge when you're hearing bias is really important. And then also letting people know when you've addressed bias, because then you make it not acceptable for larger groups, right? We experienced a situation where bias was happening, and and here's what we did about it. And I just want you all to be aware because we might find ourselves in that situation, right? So you try and really educate as you go and you're breaking down some of those barriers, but bias definitely out there.
Yeah, and not just gender bias, obviously, but certainly in the experience that we've all had. So the barriers, the walls you've hit, have there been moments as you think about them? How do you get past that? How do you deal with that to keep on this journey of hard work, curiosity? Roz, you obviously there was a moment when you were being well taken care of, but obviously whatever it was set your teeth on edge and you said, no, I'm off to do something else. But any of those kind of barriers that you might have hit, how did you determine to get around them?
Well, I didn't mean to be obscure about that barrier, which was basically not promoting me. I deserved to have more volume responsibility. I'd earned it. I was meeting all my objectives, all getting great performance reviews. And every time I asked to be promoted to another brand or another category, they'd just give me more money, more stock options. They knew I liked nice things. So they'd let me go to the trade show on the corporate jet or, let me stay in a really nice hotel. Or if the guys were going golfing, because I wasn't a golfer, still not, I'm not, they'd give me a spa package for that was equivalent of what they were paying for golf. So they would always try to seem to work it out, but they missed what was missing. Which is I wanted to be more. I wanted to do more. So the day came where my family was like, look, you are just too unhappy. Just quit. We are going to help you. Just find something else. So I did one day. I cried my way home from work, literally. And a mentor of mine told me, God rest his soul, when I first started trying to I patterned my business plan after the most favorite job I had, which was being a national account manager. And it has been so helpful in skirting biases because it was a niche that I worked. I was working a niche business. I wasn't working general categories, nor did I have relationships in those categories. And I learned early on not to overpromise and underdeliver. People have short memories when you do. I do know that what helped me with biases was that niche and being so-called not trying to compete against other brokers who had all categories. And my mentor painfully told me, he used not so great words, but he meant them well. You are not that good. You can't do all that in the business plan you've put together. Find a niche and stay there and find a way to keep it interesting because otherwise you'll dilute your effectiveness.
So that self-awareness and advice, obviously, in terms of, again, I keep talking about a journey, but it certainly feels like there is no finish line. Within that context, other things that for the rest of you, where you've thought about, okay, this is either enough, it's not working, or there's something else out there, and how do you navigate that? How do you get past that? Tina?
Yeah, great question. I think we've all hit barriers. We've all hit that wall and you bounce back and you're like, I can do this, and you hit that wall again. There are so many times that you can hit that wall. Okay. And when you hit that wall, and like Roz, your family said, you are just miserable, make a change. Okay. I'm blessed with a fantastic family, and my family said the same thing to me. Like, what you're experiencing and your dissatisfaction is bleeding to the rest of us. And you're not you, Mom. You're not you. And that was so startling to me. And I'm like, wow, you know what? I do. I got to make a change. And but I had to also caution myself, you never run away from anything, you run to something. Okay. So I'm like, okay, I'm not just going to sprint. I'm going to be very choiceful. There was a time that years and years ago, you would go into a meeting and you'd look around the room, whether it's big or small, and you had your tick marks and you're like, wow, there's 50 people here and there's 5 women. Wow. And then there came a time I was like, you know what? Stop counting, because we're all the same. Okay. So after I got through that, and then, getting hit in the face with my family telling me how unhappy I am, I'm like, wow, you know what? I'm the one in the driver's seat. I'm letting somebody else control my positivity, my outlook, and my attitude. Attitude is everything. Pick a good one. Okay. So I had to pick it and move on. Okay. So I try to view those things and teach my kids that it doesn't matter tall, short, male, female, we're just people. Positive intent. Okay. And if you can't get your word across, or if you get asked something, you're like, I have said in gender bias, would you ask a male what you just asked me? Okay. Yeah. And it wasn't to be mean and mount my broom and the whole 9 yards. It was just, would you really ask that? And a lot of times it's unconscious bias and they didn't even know they said it. But if you don't call attention to it, I know I kind of ping-ponged around there. If you don't call attention to it, you got to say something.
There's so much richness in this conversation, of course, and we're going to run out of time, of course, but it is a journey in the conversation, so that's a good piece. I want to make sure, first of all, if anybody's got questions, put them in the chat. We'll address those either now or later. But when we think about all of this and this conversation about ambition and where we're headed and where we choose not to go, in some ways it sounds like we all have had the luxury of choosing those journeys, and yet I know most of us have come to a point for a variety of reasons where we've had to do things that we weren't our favorite. But my sense is from all of you that you learn from those, listen to people, and move forward. Is that part of this? If you have to give some learning or share some learning with this wonderful group of people who are listening in today, what is the essence of this journey and where you are now? What's the one or two things you say, think about it this way? I think you've revealed a lot of them, but can I ask you, Jossie, you want to think about and reveal that?
I'm good. Yeah. Very simply said, I hope I can do this shortly. I usually am long-winded. Is life is short. Live each day to the fullest and be happy. And if you wake up at any point in time and that is not the case, it is time for change. It is time for you to go do something else. If the majority of the days you're waking up and you don't want to get up and go do whatever it is you're doing. So enjoy life. There is so much out there to do. No one is trapped. No one is stuck. Start looking before you jump, but take the jump and learn. Maybe you might make a bad choice, but all risks are worth taking, because if you don't find something that is amazing, you'll find something, and I think someone said it, that you just know now is not your passion, and you go jump again. Don't think you're ever stuck, and enjoy life. It's way too short. Go find something that makes you happy.
So that is the being in the driver's seat GPS analogy that Tina went on about for whatever. Oh, look at that lovely heart, Tina. I don't know how to do that. That's my next thing in my list of ambitious things to do. That notion of, I think about this, you've got kids, a family, you have to keep in order. So sometimes those things seem really scary if I'm that way, or if I'm just taking care of myself. Jumping, happiness is that a luxury in some cases, or it's the only way? Lisa, you're nodding.
Can I add one thing to that comment real quick, Wendy, because it resonated with what Tina said. I didn't even realize how unhappy I was at one point in time. And when I left that role, my kids were like, oh my God, this is the best day ever. And I thought it was the worst day for me. I kid you not. They were jumping up and down. And I just wasn't listening to the people around me to say, and many of you did. So find your inner circle and listen to them too, because sometimes you don't want to even admit it. And even at the risk, to your point, they're going to be happier. So don't worry about others really, because they're looking at you saying, go anyway. Roz's family said, go. Like, I think all of our inner circles will do that. We just have to listen and be open to it. Sorry.
That's all right. Lisa,
Yeah,
why don't you
no
build
apology.
on that?
It's a bit of a build, but maybe to go a little different direction, because I think you were saying like what kind of advice gets you through, and I would say, don't be afraid of what's on the other side of change. A lot of times people look at change with fear, and actually change can be super exciting. And I think, I've worked for 8 or 9 companies now. I've only left one company. So every time I was just sort of enticed by the opportunity in it. And so I would just say, like, remind yourself that you can really navigate change successfully, and oftentimes it does take you to a better place where you are happier with yourself, or your conditions are even better than you imagined. And just remember, it can be as positive as not.
Tina's showing off with more emojis. Oh, Tina, you're such a show off. That's
No,
my
it's so hard. I'm on mute talking to myself here going, yeah.
No, it's all right. My one of my tenets of Ageless Ambition is I'm very competitive. She's doing emojis better than me. I better learn to do emojis. Anyway, Roz, parting words for our community. There could be many, but for now, parting words.
Develop your own personal style. It's so important to your confidence, because you need confidence to be able to network, to be sure you're in the right place. And once you have that style, confidence, you've already got the right job, go to your community that's around you and seek enrichment, seek some more support. You know who you are, find out how it can be better. And life will make us change who we are. Be nimble. Be nimble, get back up. It could be a personal tragedy. It could be a work tragedy. It could be just, I'm just tired. Come up out of there with confidence, because you know your personal style. And inclusion. Include all ages, everybody. It's helpful now, especially in the virtual hybrid world we exist. We don't have those in office, hey, go down the hall and say, what do you think about these opportunities as much as we used to? So we need to be able to pick up the phone and call someone. We gives us that opportunity. So, I'm proud to say that I'm on the board and I have some great friends through We who've helped me through many, many opportunities. But we all have a we in our lives. And if you don't, let's try to find one.
Yeah, no, I think that's you brought up a very good point as we start to wrap up and look at questions here. That notion of how the workplace has changed, physically has changed, and that issue around how do we do this when half of our life or more is spent this way, and that doesn't mean that's an excuse for not moving this way, right? And engaging with people. I think the other thing that you've all said here, and we've got a couple of questions, so we'll jump to those, but you've all said that it isn't necessarily about a specific timeline roadmap. You've all said, yes, you have your goals, know who you are, understand, build your own confidence, Roz, listen to the people around you, but be very clear what each job requires and how you do that to the very best you can. And then if that's not working, recognize before your kids, dogs, cats, friends tell you that you're really becoming totally boring and really annoying. Think about that and move on. So there's a great consistency in all our lives, I think, in this journey. Mine was a phone call that I started to yell at somebody, my boss. I thought, oh, my mother would never accept that. That is rude. So I thought, time to move on. Anyway, we all have those moments. So thank you for the beginning of this discussion, because I know there's so much more to be had here. Christine, we've got a couple of questions there. If you want to raise those, here she comes, our big Q&A person.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a great question that's come in, and it goes, it kind of lends itself towards I think some of what Lisa was mentioning earlier. And so Lisa, I'm going to direct this over to you. Somebody asked, they said, how do we address or overcome certain stereotypes that are linked to generations? So for example, Gen Z only focusing on work-life balance and more so on the life side, right? That baby boomers were overachievers. And so how do you think about, how does that come into play relative to, aligning that against your own ambition and your goals, and being able to kind of maybe debunk some of those stereotypes to best kind of align with where you're trying to go within your career?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I do think that's going to be one of the work challenges in the not too distant future. Is these generations are going to collide more than they have potentially in the past, and because they're further on the spectrum apart of things that matter to them and what they're willing to do about what matters to them. But if I think about Gen Z and how do you get the best out of Gen Z, is really understanding what matters to them, because once they link that, they are willing to work hard. They will put in the extra effort, but they really need to see that link to what is important to them. So you have to ask the questions. You have to generate a conversation where there's a better understanding across generations, or across leaders and employees or colleagues. And you have to be intentional about that. Otherwise, you will keep missing each other in the attempt, and that creates a lot of tension in a workplace. When I think about how people age, I always think like, well, what legacy do you want to leave? Like, what interests you now that you would like to focus on in your career, and how do we really help you amplify that in the stage of work that you want to do now? And so you appeal to different things, I think, based on where people are, and you spend the time and energy to look into those situations, and particularly those individuals, because it will vary. Even though they're in a certain generation, what matters to them will still vary a bit. And look, I do think a lot of people talk about Gen Z, and I love Gen Z because they are challenging us in new ways. I think about, we're going to have to figure out some things differently, but I think they're going to help us do it. So I think this combination of AI coming in, with them saying, look, I'm not afraid to work hard, but I'm going to balance work life. Well, a productivity engine like AI is a perfect thing for them to get in and help the company unleash, so that they can get that balance, right? They can work smarter, not harder, not longer. So I think you got to think about those kinds of things.
Absolutely. Anybody else have some thoughts on that relative to some of the comments that Lisa had shared? Roz, any perspective on them?
The only thing
Go ahead, Jess.
I would just add, like, inspire everyone to belong in the conversation. It doesn't matter, even if they all are part of the same generation, is inspire them to be participants in the conversation, empower them to use their voice. And then you're kind of tapping into the individuality of them, no matter what generation, who they are, and letting them bring that forward. And if you do that overall, then you don't even have to segment people even into generations. You just do that as your natural practice, and letting people know they have a voice and you want to hear it, especially if you're leading the conversation.
Perfect.
100%. I was just going to say, we as leaders, we have to listen intently and with a purpose. We can't pretend. We can't act like we're listening. If Gen Z or any generation is going to come with an idea, or needs help, or wants to have a conversation, you just have to listen intently.
Perfect. Last thing I'll ask all of you is, and Wendy identified it, but one of the kind of key themes I think we heard today was a level of courage. So courage in having, like Lisa had mentioned, being comfortable challenging some of the conventional norms or things that you see, and being vocal about some of the things that you think potentially need to be addressed. Courage and being vulnerable and having those honest, curious conversations, like Joss had mentioned. I think Roz had mentioned, and being able to open yourself up to listen and learn and continually take in from around you. I'm curious, is that a trait that you feel developed through your career? So as you progressed, you became more comfortable in having that level of courage to have those conversations, or is it something that you feel was always there? So if somebody's thinking back now, earlier in their career, how they can develop that, are there key elements you think influenced your courage along the way? Tina, I'll ask you.
I guess I would just say it's back to whether you had a mentor or someone you wanted to emulate. Okay. If you see someone, male, female, young, old, and you're early in your career in your organization, align yourself with them. For me, that's what happened. Okay. And it was a mentor that I go back to. I learned just as much what not to do as what to do. Okay. And it grows over time. And some days you feel more courageous than others, but just don't, look yourself in the mirror and when you brush your teeth in the morning and you go to bed at night, like I've been courageous today and I've been me and I've said what I needed to say and I've done what I needed to get done and I loved it and I'm inspired by it.
Christine, I would say yes as well, but maybe for a little different reason. I think what I realized as I was progressing through my career, I was sitting in rooms and listening to conversations where a lot of things were going unsaid that needed to be said. And I think it was just like starting to build that courage to put additional things into the conversation. And of course you start small with that and you dip your toe, right? But over time, it was like I did get more confidence to do that, but it needed to be done, and again, I think, a lot when we were earlier in career, especially because they just weren't even thinking about like a working mom or, there were just things that, wow, how are we going to get where we want to go, guys, if we don't ask some of these additional questions or put some other thoughts out here? So that's how my courage, I think, got started. I was really feeling a vacuum around the things that needed to be talked about.
I love that. Things going unsaid. That's perfect. We did have one last question, and Jossie, I'm gonna pose it to you. And someone said, what do you believe will be the top 3 changes needed in our communities and society for women's full advancement in the future of the retail revolution? So as you think about even now within your new position, what are the top 3 things that you think will be needed as kind of game changers to really kind of push and forward women within our industry?
So I think the first thing is we need to have our voice and we need to change the landscape of decision makers, right? Because women are those that shop and they are not where the voice is. So 100% we have to keep chipping away at that. And then number 2 is tap into the women that are in retail and bring them forward. There's so many women, and unfortunately the leaders are not typically reflective of the workforce. So building the confidence and the courage, as we talked about, through the retail lower levels, if you will, and show them that the art of the possibility of what that they can do, and then continue to evolve and make sure you're listening to the voice of the customer and what does the customer want and need, and continue to pivot there. And don't just say because it worked before, it's going to continue to work. So the voice of the customer in retail always has to be first and foremost. We forget that sometimes.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, ladies, for a fantastic conversation today. This has been amazing. Thank you, everyone who joined us. This session has been recorded, so we will share the link out on our LinkedIn. And for those of you who are looking to become more engaged with WE and come along with our journey, we would love to bring you along and have you join our community and get involved. We have a QR code here that you can scan that takes you to our website with more information. But we are looking to build our community every day, and we love to bring new people in. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next conversations with WE.